Welcome to the first ever YouTube video I'm ever doing. But what is it going to be about? Well, it's going to be about a little concept I call the VIN method. The VIN concept that I've been working on since I started trading. I wanted to essentially make my own sort of strategy, right? My own strategy that I could then go on to teach, right? That I could then go on to help people learn a little bit better, right? So we're here from copy trading. I want you to, first of all, erase every assumptions you have about trading. Release everything. I don't want to know about what you think you know, because if you're a copy trader, it more works out that you don't really know much, all right? You don't know much. You've been taught a false reality. But don't worry, because you've come for the solution. And when I say the VIN method, right? Or the VIN strategy, this is something I've worked on myself. Now, the terminology will be different, but a lot of the concepts will be quite similar to what you would already know. But what I was aiming to do with this is I want to break it down in a sort of fashion that anyone could understand. That would be very easy for the average person to be able to grasp, if you will, right? So that's what I'm doing here. If you see me through TikTok, through Instagram, whatever, welcome. Welcome, welcome, welcome. And without further ado, let's get into it. The very first influence we're going to be talking about today is fracture candles, right? Now, let's go on to the charts very quickly and identify what a fracture candle is, because it's a very, very simple thing, right? As you're seeing right around here is where a huge break of structure comes. But in order to identify a fracture candle, we must also first, let me make this a rotated triangle. There's two steps, and I'm going to have them in the captions right up here. There's 2 steps to identifying a fracture candle, right? First of all, there has to be a break of structure incoming. So when you see it surpass the first loaded zones, right? And this is essential in our sort of understanding of what trading is, right? So let me just move this around to the best of my ability. These stupid rotated triangles are always hard to kind of move around a bit, you know, they like to just annoy me. What the rectangle is aiming to do here is it is aiming to highlight the resting orders on this chart. So if it will let me move it around a bit, as accurately as you possibly can when you're doing this, try to use it to identify the resting orders, right? So we'll have to make it a little bit bigger, just like this. And there we go. To the best of what I can do right now, this is what we have, right? But essentially, what a loaded zone is like resting orders, right? It's a place where orders were previously filled, but within this zone, these orders remain. So it kind of helps us think that this is a place that price is going to wipe, right? So this zone is the very first thing. It's the beginning of understanding the fracture candle, right? So within this, we have, right, 1, 2, 3, and it doesn't have to be touching all of them, just so you know. The loaded zones don't have to touch all of them. I'm going to do a separate video about this. They only have to hit the very obvious ones. But through these very obvious ones, right, think of it this way. It's a concept called loaded zones. Right here is a compact area with a lot of fulfilled orders within this compact area. So we use this as a sort of identifier. Okay, when the price reaches up to here, which is a session high, almost a session high, we can assume that it may come back down. But we must wait. For this part of the strategy, you must wait until you see this, the change of direction, the break of structure, if you will, or the retrace fracture is what I like to call it, right? So we move back down. This right here is the fracture candle, and you can trade this. Now this fracture candle, as you can see as we're moving downwards, has now from here, this zone here has officially entered the loaded zone. And as we move down, the fracture candle slowly starts to break every piece of liquidity, right? So from one end to the other, we break every single piece here in the loaded zone. So this candle, we need to catch it here, roughly here, or even up here, even better. But the idea here is that we're using fracture candles. We have 2 confluences. So we have number 1, loaded zones. Number 2, the fracture candles. And you will see this as price changes. So when you get a candle like this that starts breaking and closes slightly below the wick of the other candle, you can assume that there's a fracture candle coming. So let's say it like this, right? Let me draw this out. This is the candle, right? And you get a sell candle that closes like this. I'm not the best at drawing here. This will tell you that there is a fracture candle incoming and that it is going to start filling the loaded zones. All right, very simple, very easy, but very effective, because when you are searching for these zones, right, you have to have a loaded zone prior, and you can assume then that price will wipe. Now, there are a lot more other concepts tied to this, but as a very, very simple strategy, you could use this as loaded zones equal similar to RO, resting orders, plus fracture, right? You could take, if you see this closure, which is kind of like an evening star pattern, but a little bit not as significant, right? If you see this closure here, you can open up a short, and we take it from roughly here down to the bottom of this, close it to the top of the candle. It's a quick trade, right down to about here. You make a beautiful trade. Not the craziest RR, it's not the best of the best. You're not going to get insane returns on these trades, but these are for smaller kind of scalping strategies, because this is a quick trade you make. This is only in the 15-minute chart, you see. So these are more for like, you scalp, you chop it in half, you take smaller chops. So all this is loaded zones plus fracture candles, which equal to basically you're trading on the assumption that these loaded zones are going to be refilled as they move back downwards. But you have to wait for the retrace fracture, which is equal to a break of structure, right? So you see this around here. Once it breaks this level, you can assume that's going to start changing, okay? So as I said, these are going to be very quick videos running through my own type of spin on strategies. I like to use it because I find that when you complicate things too much, and this is XAUSD I'm trading, by the way, so if you're trading anything else, you could implement it, but it's the best for the XAUSD pair. Now, I like this strategy the most because of the fact that it's a very, very simple thing. You just have to, once you're here at this point, and you see all these orders, you just have to wait, right? Wait, keep an eye on the charts, and when you see this break, you can assume that the trade is coming, because you will get the fracture candle, you will be able to trade the fracture candle, and you will break the loaded zone, because it's filled with liquidity that would need to be filled, right? So that's what essentially it is. This is a zone here, this loaded zone is a zone filled up with liquidity. Just think about all this as liquidity in this zone. It's just a load of liquidity that's going to be wiped as it moves down. So it's like, it's kind of like a fair value gap for liquidity, right? So that's all for today. That's all I'm going to be doing. I hope you're going to enjoy these videos. These are just going to be very short strategies, very short breakdowns. If people want bigger and larger breakdowns on this, on what I'm doing here, let me know. This is a very simple strategy. I call it I like to call it the loaded VIN concept. Works for smaller scalp type trades. So yeah, these aren't like separate confluences that I'm going to be breaking down in every video. What I am going to be breaking down in every video is separate like strategies, smaller miniature strategies. This is called the loaded VIN concept. That's what I like to call it, right? So without further ado, that's the end. That's all I'm going to be going on today. But maybe I'll get into a sort of a position of posting these videos often, because I feel like you see a lot of repetitive behavior online. So I'd like to break that. This is a new strategy. It's my strategy, VIN strategy. I have a lot of them in the bank, a lot of different concepts just like these. So stay tuned for more. Thanks for watching.